reaction. Let's get reaction right now from Republican Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty. Senator, high prices are already weighing on Americans.
Certainly.
And we saw that in today's report. We may see it in tomorrow's report. But still, the president expected to come out to the Rose Garden and talk about how wonderful the economy is, how great the job market is. That's what we think we're going to hear. How does he sell that message to the American public when they are paying the price at home every day for food, for groceries, for gas?
Well, the American public aren't buying it. I'm certain he's going to come out and talk right past the public again. But that pain is being felt by every American citizen. You saw that, credit card debts have gone up to levels before the pandemic. Every American that I talk with, every middle-class person is living paycheck to paycheck right now. The pain is enormous that we're being, dealt from this administration. Inflation is up 20% plus for almost everything since Joe Biden came into office. Yet he persists in policies that keep energy prices high, the regulatory policies that are sclerotic and overbear on the economy. Everything that he does has been inherently inflationary. And you've got a Fed and a Treasury that are trying to deal with this by inverting the yield curve, trying to hold mortgage rates down. They're taking some very dangerous steps trying to address this from a policy standpoint, and it's very, very difficult.
Well, the American consumer is sitting on a lot of debt. We're learning. We learned that in this report today. But the nation is sitting on a lot of debt. We're at $34 trillion.
You're absolutely right.
And rising. So how does the president, again, address the rising, the debt that we're facing as a nation, but also keeping the Chinese out from bringing in products that, at this point, a lot of things we need, medical supplies. You heard our correspondent at the White House talk about this. Solar panels, aluminum, steel, solar batteries. This is a president that wants us to all drive electric vehicles, but that he's keeping the Chinese out from the electric vehicle market. I'm assuming that's a political move, but you tell me.
Indeed. In terms of dealing with inflation, one of the first things he could do is stop spending all the money that's still baked into the system for all of the stimulus that we never needed. These green projects, these green programs, they're billions of dollars that are still lined up to come into the economy. That's going to be inherently inflationary. And he has got a very easy tool to deal with that there. He's not going to do it. With respect to the tariffs that we're talking about right now, there's been some comparison to President Trump's tariffs, but I'll tell you, President Trump imposed tariffs for strategic reasons to protect domestic industries that China was unfairly competing against. What Joe Biden is doing here, what I expect to hear in the Rose Garden, is sort of a deflection, if you will, trying to blame the Chinese for the fact that Joe Biden has gone in and distorted the market for electric vehicles. They've used regulatory mandates, subsidies, solar panels, you'll hear the same thing. But the mandates and the subsidies distorting the domestic market aren't working. We don't have the infrastructure to support it. Americans aren't buying it. But he's going to try to turn around and deflect by imposing tariffs on China. Again, this is just a bait and switch type of activity that we tend to see from the Biden administration.
What else do you think we're going to hear today from President Biden as we wait for these remarks? Because we don't know if there's going to be a Q&A, but if there is, certainly what's happening with the U.S. economy is going to be front and center, and he's going to have to come up with an answer because we looked at the recent polling, in particular this new New York Times Siena poll, which shows us that in 5 of 6 swing states, Joe Biden is losing to former President Trump.
Certainly.
Substantially.
Certainly. And I think if people ask themselves a very basic question, was I better off when President Trump was in office or President Biden? The answer is very clear. President Trump's economic policies absolutely worked. The deregulatory effort that he undertook as soon as he came into office, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that set our economy on a pace of growth that was double the GDP growth rate of any other major economy. Joe Biden has not been able to do that at all. In fact, what Joe Biden has done is unloaded inflation on Americans at every turn. And Americans are feeling the pain. That's what the polls are reflecting.
What are your priorities right now in the Senate?
Right now, we're trying to navigate through the end of this year, trying to deflect the Biden administration from doing even more damage to try to get themselves an advantage in November. This is going to be a difficult time. We'll probably have we'll probably have the NDAA coming through from a defense authorization standpoint, but very little, I think, will happen other than some work on appropriation bills as we move into the next year.
Do you find that there is more of a concerted effort among Senate Republicans to get more done on the agenda, considering what we've seen, which is the disarray in the House? I'm sure that's been troubling for you to watch, as other senators, your colleagues have told us repeatedly that they're frustrated with the lack of action by House Republicans.
Well, the House is under control of Republicans, and we want to see as much as possible happen in that regard. But coming back to the Senate is under the control of Chuck Schumer, and you talk about disarray and a lack of strategic direction for the United States Senate. It's been really hard. It's been very difficult.
I say that because I feel like more has gotten accomplished in the Senate, even with the Democrats in charge of the Senate, than has in the House, where you just said it, the Republicans are in charge of the House. That push and pull has been very, I think, frustrating for many Americans that want to see things done. We want to see actions taken, the business of Washington to proceed.
Cheryl, I will compliment the House on this. Just last week, they passed a piece of legislation that I put forward. And that legislation is very simple. Most Americans support this, and that is to not count illegal aliens in the census for the purpose of apportioning congressional districts and electoral votes. The Republicans in the House came together. Every Democrat voted against it. We've got that on record now. They want to count illegal aliens in the census. In the Senate, that's going to be more challenging. I've already put it to the floor once, and every Democrat voted against me. However, they control the Senate right now. That's why it's so important to change that dynamic in November.
Senator, it's always great to see you, especially here in New York. Thank you for visiting us here.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Bill Hagerty.